They told us to observe but never interfere, to watch quietly and learn. And I had always followed that rule ever since I landed on Valtheria, the lush green moon orbiting the red gas giant Urdrax. I was just a junior xenoanthropologist, fresh out of Terran Academy, sent as part of a long-term research team assigned to study the aristocratic classes of the Elverians, tall, elegant beings with luminous skin and silver flowing. Hair they moved with a grace that seemed unnatural, like watching wind pass. Through water their voices carried kind of song even when they whispered, and among them none were more elusive or revered than Princess Elrith. She was their future, their sacred flame, and for all the months I lived on their moon, I never once expected her to notice me. That change during the Eclipse Festival, a sacred event only performed once every cycle, when the twin suns of their system aligned behind Urdrax, and bathed the moon in violet shadows. The palace was adorned in crystal and silk. I was allowed to observe the rituals from the far east balcony, along with a few other humans and diplomatic guests. We had strict boundaries. We were not to approach, not to speak, not to be seen, really just. Shadows watching shadows, and I was fine with that content to take. Notes on my datapad, cataloging every motion, every symbol, every whisper of ancient language. Then she turned. She had been standing at the center of the dais, tall, radiant, her robe woven from threads that shimmered like the galaxy itself. High priests and elders circled her, chanting something old and holy. But then in the middle of the rites, she turned slowly, deliberately, and looked straight at me. Not at my group, not in the direction of the balcony, no. She looked at me specifically, her eyes locking with mine across that impossible distance. And then she smiled. It was small, almost hesitant, but unmistakable, a soft smile that lasted only seconds, and yet etched itself into my memory as though it had been branded into my soul. I froze, unable to look away, unable to breathe, unsure what I had done or why she had noticed me. I was no one, just a quiet observer among many. But in that moment it felt as if time paused, as if the air bent around her just to deliver that glance, and then the moment was gone. She turned back, as if nothing had happened, and the ritual continued. The chants rose, and the violet sun dipped, and I stood there numb, wondering if anyone else had seen what I just saw. But no one reacted, no one said a word. That night, I reviewed my holofeed on loop, confirming to myself again and again, yes, she had looked at me, yes, she had smiled, and no, it made no sense. Days passed and weeks, and she never looked at me again. I returned to my observations, trying not to let the memory distract me, but I couldn't shake it the way she had turned, the timing, the look in her eyes, and the smile, soft, sure, almost familiar. Then one day she disappeared. Security locked down overnight all communication, restricted human staff reassigned without warning, and whispers rippled to the palace halls. Someone said the princess was missing, someone else claimed she had left willingly, none of it confirmed. I was packing my things ready for departure when my door chimed, and I answered, expecting an officer or maybe an escort. Instead, I saw her. Princess Elrith stood in my doorway, without guards, without formal attire, just a cloak that shimmered like falling stars. She looked tired, her eyes dimmer than I remembered, and she said a single word in Elverian before stepping inside. I didn't stop her. I couldn't speak. I only watched as she walked to the center of the room and placed her hand on my chest just over my heart. And suddenly the room was gone, replaced by trees, by wind, by the scent of fire and rain, and the sound of bells in the distance. We stood in a forest, ancient and alive, with glowing plants and stone towers half sunken into earth. Elrith faced me, and as her hand remained over my heart, I saw her memories, not as words, but as impressions, as waves of thought that washed over me like a tide of dreams. I saw a planet burning, its skies torn open by ships I couldn't identify. I saw her as a child crying as shadows fell on a temple. I saw a figure reaching out from a ruined bridge, a human, I think wearing old armor, and in all the memories I kept appearing a stranger in their visions, a ghost in their dreams. Then I saw myself standing on the balcony, looking confused as she smiled, and I saw her feel something as she did, a sense of recognition. "You are the key," she said, not in words, but in meaning. And then she let go, and we were back in my quarters, and she stepped away with that same smile still on her lips, and then she vanished. No alarms, no panic, just silence, and a lingering sense of something vast having touched my soul. I never saw her again. The next morning I was pulled from the moon, my credentials stripped, my research confiscated, reassigned to a backwater station where nothing ever happened. But I didn't forget, and I didn't stop looking even when it nearly ended my career. I kept asking questions, kept scanning frequencies, and running simulations, and dreaming of violet light and forest bells. Years passed, and I thought maybe I had imagined it all. Maybe I was crazy until the day a message arrived with no origin code, no sender, just an attachment and image. It showed an ancient stone tablet half buried in moss cracked and weathered, and on its face was a carving of the Eclipse Festival, and in the center stood Princess Ellerith, her face perfectly etched, her eyes looking directly at a second figure smaller, on the edge of the scene, carved with care and unmistakable detail. It was me. Below the image were alien runes old even by Elverian standards, and I had to dig through half a dozen restricted libraries to translate them. And when I did, they read the one who stands outside, yet shapes the fire, the one unseen who is always known. I spent years trying to understand what that meant, trying to trace her path, trying to decode the visions she showed me, but nothing made sense until the dreams began. I started waking up with starlight in my eyes and words I didn't speak written on my walls, fragment of language. I had never learned, symbols pulsing with strange energy, and always her voice echoing softly, not speaking, not commanding, but inviting. You matter, she would say, not as reassurance, but as prophecy. And I still don't know why. I don't know what she saw in me, or why she came to me, or why she left that mark, that memory, that burden. But I know this whatever she gave me wasn't a mistake. And I have to believe, there's more I have to believe, that smile meant something more than kindness, that the glance on the balcony was the beginning of something greater than I could imagine. So I keep working, I keep watching the stars, listening for her voice, looking for the forest that doesn't exist except in dreams. I write what I remember, I collect what I can, and I wait for a sign. Because somewhere out there she's still watching, and somewhere out there the truth waits to be found. And when I find it, maybe, just maybe, I'll finally understand why the alien princess turned, looked at me, smiled. And why after all this time, I still don't know why.